Global regulation in a decentralized world. The new paradigm. What to expect. Moderated by Dr. Jane Thompson, Kasei Holdings. With Y Lum Kwok Sr., ADGM. Marwan Alzarouni, Dubai Blockchain Center. Loretta Joseph, McDonell-Nadeau Consultants. And Ricopeng, Sanctum Ventures.
So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first, hopefully most stimulating panel of the entire 2 days. And we're going to wake you up with some excitement about regulation. So everyone talks about regulation, especially in the blockchain community, mainly people try and avoid regulation and worry about what the regulators are doing. But with our panel here today, we've got some global experts from government, industry and regulators to talk to you about what's going on, why it matters, and how it's going to apply to decentralized activities. So let me start with just asking the panel to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what they do. So Dr. Marwan.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Marwan Alzarouni. I am CEO of Dubai Blockchain Center, and we are actually an ecosystem building entity. We are an impact business that helps blockchain entities flourish and grow in the UAE. We also provide education as well as help events be launched in the UAE.
Loretta Joseph.
Morning everyone, my name is Loretta. I've been working in the policy space, I guess, around virtual assets and digital assets for about 10 years. I've written some of the legal frameworks in the world around digital assets, both from a security regulation point of view and also from an AML-CTF point of view. At the moment, I do a lot of work around AML-CTF regulations for VASPs.
And Ricopeng.
Hi everyone, good morning. Ricopeng from Sanctum Global Ventures. We are a VC fund. We are also incubator and accelerator in the crypto space. I'm also part of the Unity Ventures and also the founder team of the Philcoin, the first philanthropic coin in the crypto space. We also organize a Deep Tech Forum. It's one of the initiatives that we've taken a non-profit approach to incubate more deep tech ventures. I've also founded the World Blockchain Center, a not-for-profit that will be incubating more coders. They are from underdeveloped countries, especially kids with autism, savant syndromes, refugees, and also disabled children to teach them coding, then get them out of poverty. So we also have a lot of initiative in terms of the Sanctum media agencies to incubate projects and help projects in doing the right PR marketing approaches. We also have a Sanctum Talent, which help to acquire talents into the crypto space. It's one of the very challenging things in the crypto space where we need to have the right talent to grow the projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and it's just so encouraging to see more and more people talking about blockchain and social transformation, because this really is a technology that can contribute in so many positive ways to so many people's lives. But let's come back to regulation, which is one of the kind of fundamental discussions that the world are having, especially in the context of decentralization. So let's kind of start from a government perspective. Dr. Marwan, and talk about what are the kinds of things that you think about in terms of regulation and why it's important for government.
I think one of the main things that we are looking for in Dubai is to create an environment where companies can feel very comfortable that they are protected when it comes to regulation, as well as a framework for them to work, get access to banking, and also for the consumer to be comfortable in spending within this space. One of the things that we are also seeing as a reward for doing this is actually attracting institutional investors into investing in the crypto space. And right now, I think this institutional money is starting to come to the space, but they want more regulation just to be at ease more into investing in the cryptocurrency and blockchain ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you. So regulatory certainty will attract companies. You need to protect consumers, and institutional investors just won't come unless there's sensible regulation. So we'll now go to Loretta, who's a bit of a regulation vigilante, and she's worked with around 10 countries, helping them set up their crypto regulations. From a regulator's point of view, talk about the things that you think are important.
When we look at regulation in the space, it's always a difficult one because you have to balance sensible regulation to protect consumers, investors, to stop things like terrorism financing, but also encourage innovation. So regulation's not put in place to stop businesses. It's put in place to discourage bad actions and bad actors. So it's a fine line because technologists are not policy writers and policy writers are not technologists. So I've spent a lot of the last 10 years being that bridge so both worlds can talk to each other, because the internet taught us one thing: the walled garden approach doesn't work. And as technology develops, we need collaboration from both industry, policymakers and governments to ensure that we create the best regulation that allows the ecosystem to foster and to grow, but it makes sure that we keep out the bad actors from different jurisdictions.
Thank you. And Rico, from an industry point of view, the industry is a bit bipolar, I think. There are a lot of people who are frightened of regulation and anti-regulation, and there are others who see that it's actually an important thing for industry to grow. Can you talk about how you see things from an industry perspective?
Coming from the industry, I would say it's market-driven, and it's the demand-supply issue here we have. On one hand, you have the regulators, such as my good friend I've known for 20 years since we were in Australia, who are representing regulators that, look, we need to regulate this. On one hand, we have 1.7 billion people globally that do not have a bank account, and out of which 1.7 billion population on the world, 1.2 billion people do not even have a government-issued identity card. There's no way these 1.2 billion people on Earth going to get KYC done. So now you know why there's a DeFi movement in the whole space and where this movement is going to, because 1.2 billion and 1.7 billion do not have a bank account yet. So yes, one end we need to have regulations to protect the institution and mass majority of the people on Earth when they go into investment. But one end we want to have inclusive environment for people who are not so fortunate like us to have access to cryptocurrency. So I think that's where the balance has to be met. Yes, this is why we have centralized exchanges where institutional investors, custodian can be onboarded to KYC, AML regulations. On one end, there are people who actually rely on DeFi, decentralized finance, on the day-to-day living. You have a very good success story and case study where people playing games on Axie Infinity, play to earn model, and that earning that they can earn through playing games and being part of the community is more than enough for them to have a decent life and normal life in where the countries they are from. And most of them are from underdeveloped countries. At the same time, we have a lot of movement in the charitable donation side that are looking at creating more DeFi, non-custodial mechanism to help the people in need. Right now, the trend that's gone on to Metaverse, to Web3, and to have GameFi, it's the same thing. It's part of the development and the trends of DeFi towards that notion where it's important to have a balance and the freedom of choice. There are certain people who like to use centralized exchanges to do trades. There are people who like to use DeFi to do transaction where it's a peer-to-peer sort of transaction. So how do you monitor that? The next second you create a decentralized wallet and you start transacting and receiving funds and sending funds, how are we going to regulate that? I will throw that question back to the panel. At the same time, when you ask, is this your wallet? And the guy said, sorry, I lost the seed phrase or private key to access the wallet.
Yeah, thanks. And I think the points about financial inclusion are well made, and the fact that cryptocurrency growth is greatest in emerging economies rather than, and especially peer-to-peer. So we see that. It has utility. and people are using it. But at the same time, we also know every day we're reading another 120 million got stolen out of a DeFi project. So consumers are not protected. And somehow, decentralised or not, regulators are going to start looking at wash trading in NFTs and terrorist financing and money laundering. So let's then talk about how can you regulate decentralised organisations? Dr. Marwan, let's start with you.
Look, I think not everything can be regulated, and I think there's going to be always a lag between technology and regulation. Sorry. And I think all of us will see always this trend ongoing. There's always also, alongside the regulated markets, there's always going to be unregulated markets and technologies that do not really allow for regulation to happen by default. But I think all of them eventually will come around, and there will be mechanisms where we can have regulation. I'll give you an example. NFT marketplaces, when we started, and the majority of the ecosystem around NFT marketplaces are all around no KYC AML. But we are seeing now a lot of platforms, at least here in the UAE, such as the Galaxy of Art, for example. It's a KYC only platform, so you cannot buy, trade, or be listed as an artist without doing KYC AML. And we're seeing that becoming a trend as well within the NFT space, because originally it was the wild, wild west, no KYC AML whatsoever, but we've seen really mind-boggling amounts invested in NFTs. And I think having KYC AML brings a little bit more legitimacy and more, oversight over these kind of platforms and this kind of market. So it's a welcome, addition to that kind of space. But also, we also understand that not everything can be regulated, and we understand that there's always going to be some emerging tech, especially with GameFi now coming on, that will be more challenging to regulate, and we'll take it one step at a time, I guess.
Thank you. And Loretta, maybe you'd like to talk about DAOs, because we hear a lot about these code-governed organisations. What's your view about regulation and DAOs?
So when I first started writing regulation back in 2017, I only had to worry about cryptocurrency. And a lot of regulators now are still worried about that, and they're still worried about ICOs. So I've been looking for the last 18 months at things like DAOs, decentralised platforms, DeFi, and it's very interesting because if you look at a DAO, I think a DAO could be a limited liability partnership business. So when we're looking at regulation, we're looking at two different parts. So when you're looking at something that's principle-based, which is security and prudential regulators do, and then you have risk-based regulation, which is done for the likes of money laundering and terrorism financing. You look at these decentralised platforms, and I was a derivatives trader for many years. Back in 2000, when we were trading high-frequency models, the regulators didn't know how to regulate them, but they soon figured out they could regulate the platform. So I think we're seeing regulators moving to regulating platforms. I think as time's going by, you will see regulators have nodes in systems. In DeFi, they'll be just part of the system. And I think as the trend progresses, we're going to see law and code together. So I think regulation's not going to go away. Regulators are not as stupid as people seem to think they are in the industry, and a lot of it's been done before, but it's just repackaged in a new way. If you look at you're talking about peer-to-peer trading. Most of the peer-to-peer or decentralised exchanges are not at all decentralised. So they operate escrow services. So regulators are looking at new ways to regulate, not to stop innovation, and I think that's where there's always a bit of a confusion. Regulators don't want to stop innovation. They don't want to stop people building businesses. They just want to stop bad actors doing bad things. And you always see bad actors with technology. You always do. And if we can limit that, that's a good result. But I don't think any regulator actually wants to see innovation stifled. But I think back at DAOs, I think what you'll see is they'll be considered to be limited liability partnerships, and you'll see regulators taking positions in protocols to be part of the platform.
Yeah, thanks. And Rico, let's go to the Metaverse, shall we? We're all kind of in there. We've got our avatars. We're playing games. We're doing shopping. We're having a great time. Why regulate the Metaverse?
Well, one of the concerns that we have been fearing since the start of NFT trend last year is that with the advancement of technology in AI, in deep face and all those things, and children playing games in the metaverse world, the parents are concerned, is my children actually playing with a real person, or is it a bot or a AI-driven account chatting and luring my kids into purchasing something or doing a deal with them? So those are the concerns that we have in terms of the development of games and marketplace that we have in the crypto ecosystem globally. If there's no KYC being done, there's a lot of risks, which is where, there should be some good practice and good code of conduct being implemented to projects where there should be white listings. If there's a DeFi project, you need to know who are these people that is actually doing a big volume of trainings, and you do a proper KYCs. There should be escrow services for certain deal flow that is above certain amount to reduce the risk. As Dr. Marwan mentioned, there's no way you can stop it entirely, but there must be certain measures and framework being implemented as a good practice. And this is where the regulators and the whole industry should come in to say, look, we have to do this to make sure that this project is doing the right thing and reducing the risk, and that will create more mainstream adopter into DeFi. Having said that, most of the projects that we incubate, we are very concerned about how the founders are not aware of this risk. And we keep on doing education to tell them that you have to do this. Otherwise, there'll be a risk to your organization and the whole projects as its reputation to have a good practice. On the other hand, we are having a lot of concerns in terms of the technology side of things, where we are short of talent in the tech space that understands how the business operates. And we have lots of hackers who are actually, taking advantage of all this mechanism in place. So there are a lot of hacking going on at the same time to many projects on a DeFi platform or liquidity pool and all those sort of issues. So a lot of work needs to be done in this space. And one of the things that we are lobbying for is to push for a good Web3 infrastructure. Because as we observed during the war, Metaverse could be blocked in certain countries because they're still on Web2. And many projects owners do not know the risk they are having when they build on a Web2 architect. So the importance of the whole industry now is to actually have real Web3 infrastructure to actually make sure that, look, it's a safe and it's really autonomous and independent platform that we have to protect the sovereignty of the people using those platforms.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think a really important comment that I'd like to highlight there is the issue around ethical codes and standards and the digital technologies, because as opposed to analog things, you can affect millions of people when you're making the wrong decisions. So thanks for that. So we've nearly come to the end of our panel. So what I'd like to do is just a quick lightning round of the panelists. For you, if you're a blockchain company and you're wanting to move forward, what should you be thinking about in terms of the future of regulation? So Dr. Marwan.
I think, look, end of the day, you have to think in both ways. Technical enforcement through smart contracts, as well as being based out of a jurisdiction that will enable you to do what you are doing right now. So, and always think about 2 steps ahead of time. So even if you're thinking about an emerging technology that has no regulation, make sure that you are in a jurisdiction where the regulator actually understands this technology and also is open-minded about regulating it as well. So that way you have a really good environment and good understanding and a good place to work out of that's both comfortable for you and for the regulation body that you are working under.
Thank you. So don't go to dodgy jurisdictions. Loretta.
I think companies need to understand that regulations are not going away, and avoiding it is not necessarily a good thing. There's nothing wrong with being regulated. If you're a good company and you're doing the right thing, there's no problem being regulated. I always say, we harness the opportunity and mitigate the risk. When you're building a company, just make sure that you manage your risk and you're making sure that you don't have any bad actors that are using your protocol or your system to do all the things that we don't like happens to humans.
Rico.
Essentially, I believe for business owners and founders in the crypto space and blockchain space, they need to be very clear on what problem they are solving with the technology that they're building or the product and services they're building. It has to solve real problem. it has to be sustainable, it has to be realistic, and that's the challenge that we have in the space. A lot of things are very fluff, and it's very speculated. I hope to see the industry coming together to, really sit down and look at the issues that we are solving and not creating more problems to the space. It's a double-edged sword sometimes in the business that we are in. However, I believe that whatever we do, I think the main aim is to solve the problem and also giving back to the community. We are encouraging more impact-driven and philanthropic movement in the blockchain and crypto space. And we hope that, with the use of blockchain technologies and cryptography, we can bring more sovereign rights to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. And we've got a blockchain impact group here in Dubai, by the way. If anyone wants to join up, come and let me know. We'll join you to it. But I think for everyone in the industry, this is an incredibly powerful and transformative technology. There's amazing innovation going on. Let's not let that innovation be spoiled by a few bad actors. And then let's think about a future that is regulated, that still allows innovation, but protects consumers and stops terrorist financing and money laundering. So this has been an exceptional panel. Thank you very much to all the speakers, and thank you all for being here.